Welcome to Two Titans and a Hunter, a Destiny 2 podcast, a show where we discuss tips, tricks, and tools to help all Guardians succeed and enjoy playing more. So, what makes us different, you may ask? Well, we're not streamers or YouTubers. We just have a passion for Destiny and are dedicated to keeping Guardians informed and up to date with all the latest Destiny 2 news and information and opinions. We encourage your questions and feedback. You can contact us either by email at twotitansandahunter@hotmail.com or on Twitter at twotitans_hunter. Now, on with the show.
And welcome to our very merry Destiny episode, holiday special cheer thing with
lore extravaganza.
all of them.
Yes,
So much
indeed.
lore. You think you know all the lore? I guarantee you don't know all the lore. We know lore that we didn't even know was actually lore. I have no idea what I'm saying. Stop me from talking.
Respawn, grab your kids, grab your wife, grab your booze, sit around the Christmas tree, because it's time to listen to some lore with Not Arf, Arse lore.
Indeed.
I was even picking up my keystrokes. Oh my god, this is super duper sensitive.
It will be, because it's recording from your own mic, so it's going to be super
Well, it's
sensitive.
always
And it's
recording
recording
from my-
directly on your PC.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to be a little
No more
bit
bad
richer
quality
voice.
for me, baby.
Well,
Oh, God, I can actually hear him rant without his mic cutting out.
I can still cut him out. I've told him this. I can always cut him out in post.
You sure can. But then all of my minions and fans and the Respawn army will, retaliate against you.
Will they?
They will.
Because they don't know.
I'll
Come on.
tell them.
Should we get into the law?
Right.
Yeah, sure. Lore.
Yes, let's look at it in the law. Right,
lore?
what do you want to start with? Do you want to start on Aldrin or go with Eva first and then go into Aldrin off the back of that? Because it kind of
Let's
links
get rid of
in.
Eva, because Eva kind of sounds a little boring to me after reading what I read. And
she's not.
Well, I know she's not. Well, I mean, it depends on your view. Like, okay, here's the first question I had, right? How long did the Red War last, canonically? Right? Because in the game, it was like a day.
That's because you completed
Well,
the campaign.
not really,
in the
because
day.
if you think
Yeah.
if you look at it, how it actually skipped parts of the initial campaign mission, that went on for some time. When we're walking through the actual from where it's escaped the city, walk through the mountains, follow that stupid bird, and we just didn't quit. Took out the traveller. I took out Gaul.
So
Awakened the traveller.
the black screens between, like, when we're traveling, like a lot of time passed or whatever, because it fades
Yeah.
to black every now and again, and it looks like we kind of pass out or whatever.
That's right. So this in that time we were going through that, I get the impression that was maybe a month or a couple of months actually long.
But do we know exactly how long? Because you said you have the impression that it was that long, but do we know exactly how long?
We've got no confirmation of time, but you get a better once we actually go through Eva's. This lore book is actually entitled Eva's Journey. Now I believe it was actually we gained this by going through a lot of the original Dawning.
Okay, so was this the original Dawning in Destiny
D2.
2? Okay.
Yes, because it's actually a lore book, not a Grimoire card. Because you only really got your Grimoire cards back in D1. This will lead into Aldrin and the Crow. But while I'm just bringing that up, just a little bit of interest for you. How old do you think Aldrin was?
Ooh, I don't even actually know how awoken age, actually.
What do you mean? How old he was when he died via the Forsaken campaign?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, he looks to be, mid-30s, maybe early 30s, but we know Awoken live longer than that, but I don't know how long they live, right? So I have no idea.
Aldrin is thousands of years old. So is
Yeah, I
Mara,
figured.
and so are all the Awoken. Because Aldrin actually dates back to the Golden Age, when he was called Aldwen, brother of Mara.
Yes.
And his major character flaw was to actually try and
He was too
impress his
devoted.
sister. He was too, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His devotion to his sister was legendary.
Well, not just to his sister, right? Because also, there are other instances I came across. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was another instance where it showed his actual devotion, right? And me and somebody else were having this discussion a couple weeks back, and I was all like, he's not a bad guy per se. He's just a really devoted guy, and sometimes he's just devoted to the wrong thing. But now that he's a guardian, maybe now he'll devote himself to the light and to the vanguard, which for us would be a good thing with his, with his position towards being devoted to a cause or an individual or a fill in the blank, right? So, yeah. I mean, I think he would definitely be an asset as a guardian.
Back at the beginning of D1, we had to take out the Dark Heart in the garden, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, who did we get directions from to the garden?
Wasn't that him?
Ah, yes.
Him and Mara?
It was,
It was
wasn't
him. He told us how to get into the Black Garden because he'd already been there.
Yeah.
And this was to actually, he got in there to actually impress his people and to show his devotion to his queen. But something happened while he was in the garden. This is why I want to get this off my chest. He became infected with something.
Right,
It's the
yeah.
same
That's
infection
when he first
that
came
had-
across the darkness.
Yeah, and that infection festered in him for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Now, it's that infection that gave Riven a way in.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now, with that infection of the darkness and a taken Ahamkara Wish Dragon,
Yeah.
I can't say that bloody name.
Ahamkara.
With a taken,
Ahamkara.
that's the one. For some reason, I can't say it.
You can't say Savathun either, but,
Savathun. It's spelt the same.
I can say it. See, proceeds to say it incorrectly. Sorry, go.
Yeah. Basically, those two things combined twisted his mind that badly that he was completely overcome with them, and actually with the visions he saw and the way Riven brought back Fickrell, it was the founder of the Scorn, because it was actually Riven that brought him back. Because if you notice something, when you see Aldrin when he's under the influence of Riven, he's got that almost, how would I describe it? It looks like, when you look at Eris and you see her tears or the
the black crap in his eyes.
the black crap on her face. Yeah, he's got that.
Yeah.
Which is partly the infection, partly the possession by the Wish Dragon, and that combined, he wasn't aware of his actions when he shot Cade. I know this is why I will defend him, and he did it, and yes, he is guilty of doing it. But before you judge him as the Crow, don't forget this: he has already been sentenced to death and has been executed.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to tell them. He's already paid the price for his crimes. Somebody shot him in the face. I don't know if it was our guardian or what, but he has fulfilled his...
He has paid
yes.
the ultimate sacrifice there by being executed there for his crimes. That absolved him in my eyes. And with Glint coming back now, you've got to remember when a Guardian is resurrected,
he's not the
they
same
have
person.
absolutely no knowledge of their previous life.
I'm so glad you're saying this. I've been telling people this for weeks, especially your friend that we were discussing earlier. I almost said something bad. But especially your friend that we were discussing earlier, the one that keeps calling him a murdering,
Murdering bad word.
Yeah. I was like, he's not the same guy. She goes, it's the same guy. I'm like, if you even want to get into it, he doesn't even have the same body. All right? It's not the same memories. It's not the same personality, right? Because Guardians come back sometimes with different personalities. Remember?
Technically, it is actually the same body because it hadn't had time to decompose fully.
But it's reborn in light.
It is reborn in light,
Right.
and he has no knowledge of his previous actions. As you can actually tell that by the voice lines with him.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's actually excited to see us as fellow light bearers, right? And he's excited to work with us. And us being around puts him at ease by his own words, right? So no matter how you look at it, this is not the same Aldrin Sov. He is not even called Aldrin Sov anymore. So for all these people that keep giving him crap, and I understand as somebody who's obsessed with Cade, I completely understand your hatred, but you also have to realize this is not the same guy that killed him if you really follow Destiny lore and how Guardians as a, let's call them species, function, you know?
Yes. So let's take this to one of the old Dawning ships, the Amnesia S2 entry.
Okay.
It's quite a good looking ship, actually.
So when was this available? Was it available in the first Dawning?
This was actually, I think it was last year, 10th of the 12th, 2019.
So
that
it was
was
last year's
year.
Dawning. Okay.
Yeah. The Dawning welcomes everyone. Eva Levante. For the last 3 weeks, the Guardian has been camping in a rusted out shipping container, far off the main pathways that are always buzzing with sparrows. He stays out of the way of other Guardians, and if he can't do that, he keeps his helmet on. Always. All he has to his name is some beat up gear, a ring, and a silk sheet. Those are the things he woke up with. He wears the ring on a chain and keeps the sheet as a comforting reminder of something he can't remember. Sometimes he wears it draped around his shoulders. The fabric is so fine that it makes him think about the place he must have come from before this life, and how much nicer it is than where he is now. He spends his days alone. Other Guardians are an unpredictable source of pain and confusion. They all see him in the same way. Some react to him with outright hostility. Others are overcome by some personal and unexplained grief. He doesn't know why. This was the most painful lesson of being reborn. It's better to be alone, so he's always alone now, except for his ghost. One night, he sits with his head against his knees and listens to the distant snaps of gunfire. He hasn't seen anyone in about a week, but he can hear them. Somehow that makes the loneliness worse, more potent. Did you know, his ghost says, bright but gentle, the purple glint of his shell reflects the half-light outside the crate, that in the last city they are celebrating, they call it the Dawning. It is a celebration of friendship and hope and warmth. The Guardian keeps his eyes closed and forces down his bitterness. The silence lingers between them, heavy and filled with unsaid things, until his ghost gently bumps his shoulder. To feel good, they say to each other, "Happy Dawning!" Still, the Guardian says nothing, and his own silence makes him sick with himself. His ghost has never doubted him. Never doubted anyone, really. He is a well of relentless optimism, and as infuriating as that is, it's also heartbreaking and comforting and a relief. The Guardian is not going to be the one to disappoint him. There's been too much disappointment in this life already. Happy Dawning, he says.
I remember that last year we had that whole discussion on how he's back as a Guardian, because I think before that it was unsure who was in the sheet, right?
Yes.
But that solidified that it was in fact
Aldrin.
Aldrin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
So I had this
Guardian,
whole
formerly known as Aldrin.
Yeah, because he didn't have the name yet. The
Yeah.
Crow. Yeah.
But I
Gotcha.
actually think that suits him.
It does.
And he seems a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah, now, yeah.
If that doesn't get anyone with it to realise the treatment he's been getting, and he literally doesn't know why he's been getting this, he doesn't understand that what he's done. Well, it's not him that's actually done it, it's Aldrin that did it, not him.
Right.
It's almost bullying.
And
basically.
even then, it wasn't even Aldrin. It was Aldrin corrupted heavily by freaking
by darkness and the Wish Dragon.
Yeah, right? So I understand people like, well, he had the choice to ignore the Wish Dragon. But did he, though? With the darkness heavily influencing him? It's like getting somebody, hyped up on drugs and alcohol where they are not fully in control of their actions, right? And then coercing them into doing something that they think is a good idea, quotes, right? And then blaming them for it afterwards.
Do you know what a Wish Dragon feeds off?
I did. I don't remember though.
Now it feeds off your desires, and the more you desire something, the more it feeds it.
So he was the perfect person, basically.
Yeah, because his desires and the infection he had, when Fickrell was killed, because he was killed, he was bereft with guilt and grief. And that's when Riven got him, because his greatest desire was for Fickrell to live. And that's the wish that happened, and that's what created the scorn and the dark ether.
Gotcha. I always thought his greatest wish was for his sister to still be alive, because at the time we all thought she was dead.
Well,
And I don't...
that was his greatest wish then, but once he actually raised Fickrell and they had the power then, that's when Riven started to come to him in the visions. And that's when he fooled him for getting a shard of the Traveller, and he thought he was actually bringing his sister back, but he wasn't. That's when he almost ended up getting... was it eaten by the meatball at the end of the campaign there?
Yeah, he was eaten.
It was a taken meatball, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The one we have to fight in Gambit all the flipping time.
I haven't had that one for a while. Well, I'll say a while, but I've not been on in a while.
Have you been playing Gambit? No, okay, so bit of a side note right here.
Oh,
in
here we go.
Gambit? No. In Gambit.
No. What do you mean? No.
Wait, just a second. It's not a tangent, but like
It's
in
not.
Gambit,
It's a story.
I don't know.
It's always a story.
It's
There's
not
always...
a story. Listen.
You're just making
In
it
Gambit,
longer now.
let me know how.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing this to yourself. But in Gambit, all the matches that I've played so far, at least, and I'm not even exaggerating, at least half, if not more, have been the daggum meatball. And I was asking myself, what is going on? Why do we keep seeing so much of the meatball? Do either one of you know the reason why the meatball is so prevalent in Gambit now?
No idea.
Okay. I didn't know if something happened in
I'm
the
not caring.
storyline and now the meatball is like playing a bigger role in it or whatever because it's a new Gambit. I have no idea.
I think he's just one of the bosses, and he's just in the rotation. Maybe he's higher than some of the others
Is
at the
he?
moment,
Oh, I hate that.
due to the fact of the Lament being such a
Yeah,
over-the-top damage
that's why I'm
weapon
complaining because
bosses that have legs. Yeah, exactly.
I hate that.
But you're going off tangent.
No, because you brought up the meatball and whatever.
And, oh yeah, you remembered something.
Yeah, it's relevant. It's about the meatball. But now you're staying off tangent.
Right, now, this book is called Eva's Journey, and it gives you a good... It's actually one of my favourite... It's quite an underrated book. I actually quite like this one because it gives a lot of background to what is potentially what I viewed as a very underrated character that I nicknamed for a long time Grandma Stranger Danger, because she just appeared in the tower at random times saying, go and do this and I'll give you a machine gun.
I'll give you some cookies.
No, she used to give you shaders and emblems in Destiny 1, so she was useful up to a point, and you know,
Is
she
she
was
now?
a proper vendor. No, she's just a visiting vendor these days, isn't she? They use her for holiday events and events they can't explain. It's like the old granny's come back to the tower and she's gonna give you a quest to go off and do. And
For a long
spend
time,
some
it
time with you.
was theorised she was Savathun. There, is that all right? Did I say it properly that
It still
time?
is theorized. It still is theorized about
Savathun,
that.
yeah.
Unless you have some information we don't have.
As far as I know, that's pretty much been debunked.
Okay.
But with what's happened with Savathun, and it's the darkness that's driven her into Savathun into hiding, because the darkness doesn't like the fact she interfered with them trying to contact us.
who interfered?
Savathun.
She did.
That's what the interference missions were, right? Every week in that last season.
I didn't connect those dots. Good to know.
This is called Just Another Day at the Tower. It's the first sort of chapter of Eva's journey. The arched eyebrows spoke volumes. Eva Levante grinned, threatening to break through her deadpan. The request was simple enough, a shader to commemorate the end of the Seaver incident. Zavala's colour suggestion, though. Her companion held up the cloth, a ghastly combination of fluorescent yellow and blood red that would have hurt the eyes even if it wasn't laid against a particular nauseating set of stripes. Tess sighs. He can't make he can make the hive quake in fear, but that man shouldn't be let within 10 metres of a designer's table.
The reason why Eva Levante's returned I think the first year that we had the Dawning, she wasn't there, was she? I think, like you said, it was all through Tess Everett. No, it wasn't through Tess. It was through Amanda Holiday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole thing for the first year in Destiny 2 was through Amanda Holiday, and yeah, like you said, she's decided she wants to come back and get involved in this.
Well, she was actually recuperating at the farm for a long time.
Okay. Because she was in the original tower, wasn't she, when it got blown up?
When the Red War hit.
Okay.
The two women were still laughing when a shudder rocked the tower. They turned as one in the direction of the far-off sound that followed, a roaring noise neither of them had heard before. The PA blared in the small utility room they'd claimed as a lounge. Evacuation Order 77 is in effect. This is not a drill. All civilians report to designated evacuation areas immediately. Tess was at the door, palming it open, when another explosion much closer shook them where they stood. Smoke and screams floated down the hallway. Eva's memories of what followed were disjointed. She was running with Tess, gasping for breath. She remembered murmuring the names of her cousins, worrying about them down in the city. She was in a large crowd now. Tess was falling behind as Eva was crushed forward. Another explosion and the fire door slammed shut. Tess was gone, and Eva found herself with about 30 people in a small cargo bay between Tower North and the Hall of Guardians. A man was trying the far door, shouting that it was sealed. Then the roof came down. A large sphere crashed through the decks. Cabal clambered from the pod, struggling against their bulky armour as they began to fire at the civilians. That's when a dazzling blast of energy struck them from behind. The shouting was enough for 10 men, but when Eva could see again, only one massive guardian was there, ending Cabal's soldiers with a blade as long as she was tall. The helmet-faced of Lord Shax turned this way, and that taking in the room. 2 quick strides brought him to her side, and with a surprising gentleness he helped Eva to her feet. "Madame," he intoned, and she could feel the bass of his voice in her chest. "I need your help." And at his insistence, she took charge of the civilians. As he took point for their little group, with the confidence of looming presence of the Crucible Master at her back, it was effortless to keep the others quiet and focused. When they reached an evac site, a trio of anxious-looking Hawk pilots waited with their craft. As the last of the group climbed aboard, Shax laid a heavy hand on her shoulder. He towered over her and said simply, "Comrade." And then he was gone, back towards the fighting, his massive sword swung over his shoulder. Eva's last view of the tower, as her Hawk pulled away, was ruin and flame. And we all know what that sword is over Shax's back, because he stole it out of our vault.
That's not the helm splitter, is it?
No.
I think it's the Raise Lighter.
Raise Lighter or
Raise
the
lighter.
other one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the 3 exotics that we got in Destiny 1 that haven't returned yet.
Yeah, Shax has got them all.
Fair enough.
Loss of light. Valentina and her son Louis, Peregrine District, apartment block 10, 4th floor. It's the one. An explosion nearly cut her off, but she shouted into the comm unit all the louder. "It is the one with the green awning, please." The voice of the militia woman on the other end of the line was emotional. "I'll send a unit, but ma'am, the fighting across the district Did I not give you my tower clearance code?" Eva's own voice scared her, a whip crack of anger. A pause on the other end. "Yes, ma'am, I'll go myself. Tozy out." Eva slumped back against the wall. She raised her head to look around. She must have been a bakery at one point. Now the little cafe tables were barricading the doors of and the counter's glass case had been smashed into the far wall with display racks. The militia exo she borrowed the comms unit from snapped off another few shots over the half wall that remained on the shop's exterior. They looked back in her direction, anxious. "Can you fire a weapon?" Her helpless look must have been an answer, because they reached out for the comms unit. She slid it across the floor and then quickly punched into a sequence of codes. Another blast nearby caused the other civilians in the room to whimper and moan with fear. The XO barked into the unit. "We need Guardian support. Corner of the 1400 block, Anchor District. I have a large number of civilians here and our position is being overwhelmed." They punctuated their transmission by leaning out and firing off another half-dozen shots. The Cabal roared back with animal fury. It It wasn't more than 2 minutes before Eva heard it, distinctive sound of a sparrow running full out. She dared to gather herself into a crouch and peered out of the building. She was watching just in time to see a pair of them, a hunter and a warlock. That's Respawn.
Yep.
Descend on the invaders like vengeful angels. These two were professionals, she could tell. No swagger to them. They were efficient and deadly. And the soldiers began to fall back. Something happened. Eva couldn't see what it was, but both the guardians reeled. The warlock dropped to one knee like his strings had been cut. The hunter shook her head and raised a hand in the air, a distinctive signal calling for the light, but nothing happened. The cabal, like they'd been waiting for this moment, had struck hard. The hunter was bowled over by a charging centurion and crushed underfoot. The warlock didn't seem ever really to recover and fell to the ground, riddled by the weapon fire of a dozen soldiers. The Exo was standing fully upright now, shocked, and even as Eva opened her mouth to tell to get down, they fell, a sniper's target. One of the men retched in the corner, horrified. Eva gave herself no time to think. She snatched the comm unit from the ground and pushed past the civilians into a far wall. She used the reinforced case to smash out the glass and began hoisting children through once the largest glass shards were cleared out of the frames. She was the last out of the building, and a few stray bullets plucked at the wall near her as she made her escape. They didn't stop running until they were sure no one was following. She had no idea which district they were in, no clue even what the building used to be. Much of the orderly streets and the well-tended boulevards she knew had become a maze of debris, the last safe city a maze of collapsed and ruined structures. The children were huddled up in a great pile, as the older folk talked quietly among themselves. Everyone was crying on and off, but they tried desperately to keep it quiet. A high-pitched chirp across the comm unit startled Eva, and she slammed her head back against the wall behind her. She hadn't even realised she still had it. She reached down and keyed the pad. A hushed voice said, "Mom," her own voice low and shockingly gruff as she answered, "This is Eva Levante. Is this Tozy?" A pause. "Tozy's dead. She wanted me to make sure someone got back to you, though." Another long pause. Eva fought the urge to scream. "I'm sorry, Miss Levante. Block 10 is gone. Just gone. I think some of the automated defences managed to come online early in the fight, and one of their command ships must have crashed." Eva didn't hear the rest of the words. So now we're getting a bit of timescale to this. We know the tower's been attacked, and we know the Starfish of Doom has actually encircled the Traveller at this point, and all the Guardians are pretty much helpless.
So this is Destiny 2 Year 1. This is the events, if you are new to Destiny, happened in the first year with the Red War, before Forsaken, before Beyond Light, before Shadowkeep had kind of even happened.
If you've actually played the Red War campaign, this is a bit where you're getting your hide kicked around the ship by Gaul, just as you've lost your light.
Right.
Hiding at home, Eva checked the time on the small comms unit she clutched to her chest. It seemed impossible, but it had been under 2 hours since she'd been sitting and laughing with Tess. Time had stretched for her like the taffy candies some of the vendors sold during the Dawning Festival. She would have sworn that it was days ago, longer than that, when she'd been sitting in her cousin's flat, hugging Valentina, saying goodbye to Lewis. "Eva, we don't owe them anything," a gruff cough of one of the other civilians. Everyone's voice was a grinding imitation of itself. Ash filled the air, and no one could clear their throat. Eva clasped a rag to her mouth as she answered, croaking, "How dare you?" Her voice rose with her anger. "Your whole life they've kept you safe, and now you would just want to abandon them." The subject of their dispute lay collapsed on the floor of the warehouse, a quartet of guardians, all of them wounded and bleeding from their flamboyant armour. Even as she weighed up the future of their little band, she couldn't help but appreciate their fashion sense. The hunter, of course, had put in the most effort.
Oh, my mic is on. I'm sorry. I didn't realize to laugh over you like that. But the fashion sense. Oh, God. Yeah, continue. Go. Sorry.
He might be wounded injured, but he's got some good dress sense.
That's right, man. What about the hunter, though? You were talking about the hunter.
Yeah, he'd put in the most effort.
Ah, yes, of course.
The man arguing with her was was paunchy and fashion illiterate, wearing a bland functionary uniform. Part of the consensus staff. He scowled at her and grated out, "We can barely move the lot of us around, let alone all of us and a bunch of wounded, powerless guardians. Why should we risk
You don't think they've risked their lives 100 times over for you?"
She pulled the rag away from her face and coughed a mass of phlegm and ash over the side. Her mother would have died all over again in shock.
We have to keep moving. We have to keep them with us. And we have to hold out. Whatever this is, it's temporary.
He grimaced, but she pressed on.
When they regain their light, they'll...
Her diatribe was cut short by a blast of static on the comm unit, so loud she dropped it to the floor. The reinforced case took the blow so everyone around could clearly hear the deep voice of Commander Zavala when he began to speak.
Citizens of the last city, hear my words.
Like a people dying of thirst, the civilians moved to circle the comm unit. Zavala had been a pillar and a beacon of hope all their lives. Surely he would.
We are abandoning the city. We have evacuated everyone we could, but the Cabal now hunt guardians in the street. If you are able, you should make for the wilds.
Eva felt as she'd been physically struck.
The Cabal have affixed a device to the Traveller. They sever our connection to the light. We cannot hold the city. We cannot protect you.
There was a long pause, as if he was weighing his words carefully. When he spoke again, Zavala sounded very, very tired.
We are setting a rally point elsewhere in the system. Watch for a broadcast. We will return to the city someday, but I do not now know when.
Another pause.
Be safe. Be brave.
And he was gone. To their credit, the group did not yell or shout, even though it had been like only a matter of hours. They were all alive because they'd learned not to give away their position. They did cry though. Tears streaked down their faces. Those faces looked from one to another as they sought to understand, to comprehend. Eva did not cry. She stared at the comms unit. All she could think about was Zavala's shoulders. She'd often joked with him about the size of the pauldrons in his armour, that massive protective plate on his left shoulder, and now, for some reason she thought she understood, the weight on his shoulders. Eva stood and all eyes turned to her. She flinched a little, and then choosing her words carefully, "Most of them are leaving, so we have to help them." She gestured at the Guardians. "If we can keep them alive, they can protect us, keep us safe." She looked around the group and found people nodding. "Where do we go?" one woman asked. Eva looked back down at the comms unit. The Cabal will have heard that. They'll be watching the walls, expecting us to try to leave. She looked up at the room. "So we stay here. We make for the edge of the city to try and find somewhere the Cabal won't expect us to be." The seamstress reached down and pulled up the comms unit, slinging it over her shoulder. "Everybody up. It's a long way to Twilight Gap."
So this would have been really helpful at this point if we'd have had the darkness, because they could have shut off the light and we'd have gone, "Ha ha, we have the darkness."
I freeze you.
Yeah.
So, any questions so far?
Well, I'm confused that the darkness is something that wants to be sought after and wants to be taken, by us. It's sought us out after all these years and said, we want you to wield us and use us. Why didn't it do that to the Cabal? Because that would have been a lot easier for the Cabal at that point, wouldn't it? Rather than trying to capture the Traveller and capture the light, Gaul would have been better off maybe going after the darkness.
But we already have an answer to that. And this was actually explained in the campaign, believe it or not. When we freed the Traveller.
Yeah.
And I say we freed the Traveller. We defeated Gaul, and that he became that incandescent angel of light.
Yeah.
And then the Traveller stripped off the bonds of whatever, the starfish of death.
Yeah.
And it sent out that massive pulse.
It did, didn't it? Yeah.
Of light.
Which then triggered
and it
through
woke
the
up
system.
the darkness.
Yeah, it triggered through the system.
And it went through the system and out the system, and the wave went over the fleet of pyramid ships.
So
and then they turned on.
But the fleet of pyramid ships have always been out there, and now we found other pyramid ships on other planets like the Moon and places that the Cabal have been. So I'm just confused at the storyline of if they were out there and they were, the Hive found them buried beneath the Moon and kept it a secret, for quite some time, and that one on Europa has been there for quite some time.
But see, that's just it.
They
though,
were
right?
dormant.
I mean, up until the Traveler did the thing, they were inert.
They weren't giving off
they?
any signals at all. It wasn't until Eris
Exactly.
actually found that the pyramid ship in the moon in the last year in Shadowkeep that it actually started to give off signals to actually make its presence felt with the nightmares.
Okay, but I understand that the shockwave sent out across and triggered all the pyramid ships to come back on, even the one on the moon. But then the Heart of Darkness was on Venus in Destiny 1, so that was quite active and drawing, like you said, Aldrin to it so that it could kind of.
But not a whole lot of people knew how to get there, you know.
It was.
So
it
I
was
mean,
it,
the
the
Cabal
Heart-
wouldn't have known to go kill a Gate Lord, take its eye there, and then boom, now you're in. You know?
Well, that's how Aldrin first got in. They got the Cabal to kill the Gate Lord, and he got through. That's how he got through the gate, because he tricked the Cabal into doing that.
And then what? Just killed the Cabal? How
No.
did they not remember how to do it?
Basically, he fired off a few rounds at the Cabal. They stood in front of the gate, and they had a few Vex guards out there. Of course, the Cabal fired back, thinking it was the Vex. The Vex fired back at the Cabal. Cabal fired at Vex. Gate Lord came out, activated the gate, and to simplify things, that's when Aldrin and his friend Jolian actually got through the gate when the Gate Lord was was killed by the Cabal.
But then I suppose there are different factions of the Cabal, like we have learned, like the Red Legion, and then there are other different legions that are associated with other people.
The Siege Dancers and the Dust
And then you've got the Callus crew, haven't you? With like
There's
those on his ship that's, like you said, disappeared into darkness at the moment.
Well, I question that actually. What if, you know how the planets had disappeared by the pyramid ships? They've just basically moved them off into out of sync with our reality.
Yeah.
So they're still there, but
That's
they're
some
not
pretty
there.
powerful ship.
Yeah. Have they done that with the with Leviathan? If they can do that to a planet, the
I
Leviathan
think they
shouldn't
have
be
done
any
that
problem.
to Leviathan, because somewhere that I've heard, somewhere
Leviathan is
either in
gone right
game
now, yeah.
or read that the Leviathan is in one of the same situations that the planets are in. It's like a black hole. It's there with the pull of the atmosphere and things. You know, the moons are still moving round, but it's not there.
Yeah, it's the gravity
Yeah.
of its mass is there, but it's not there itself.
Okay.
But yeah, that's sorry, we've gone off on a.
Sorry, I know that's
completely
normally his.
derailed.
It's normally his thing to
I mean,
derail.
are
but
we though?
It was just interesting.
I'm curious.
You know, if we'd had the darkness at that point in time, what would the game or what would the outcome would have been?
Right, so now that leads us on to the new normal. Just getting to the outskirts of the city was an ordeal. Every day they saw the Cabal's control tightening. Civilian groups or the odd Guardian tried to make a break for it, only to be brought down by a swarm of ships hungry for a kill. The streets were no safer, with patrols moving in tandem and tanks rumbling through the district centres. Years of supporting the Guardians, of listening to their idle chatter, had filled Eva's head with details about these horrific invaders. She realised they were doing a rigid block-by-block sweeps, unimaginative and plodding, just as described by the tower. Their group hid and observed and moved only when the Cabal did. In that careful manner they arrived at the far reaches of the city, parts long abandoned where humanity was just a shadow cast upon the walls. Eva found herself in consultation every day, organising foraging patrols back towards the centre. Evenings were spent suggesting strategies for the upcoming days, and to her great satisfaction she spent nights sitting with needle and thread, trying to make sure the survivors would stay warm on the move. As the three Guardians recover, they lost their Titan on the way to the gap, and they started offering more guidance. At their suggestion, the survivors never stayed in the same place more than a day or two. They posted lookouts every night and turned on the comms unit only for every other day to listen for broadcasts, for a chance transmission, for hope. Eva was there in the room when the Guardians heard Zavala's voice. His short, terse statement played over and over.
If there is any light left in the system, we rally on Titan. If there is any light left
She
in
shut the
system,
door and
we
so
rally
the other
on
civilians
Titan.
wouldn't hear
If there
and
is any
listened
light left in the system,
as they had it out. The other warlock, Tam, identified herself as Trin's sister, and they were adamant that they try somehow to get off-world and head for Titan. The hunter, Ramos, was just as adamant to stay. Their discussion wound down and came to a slow stop when all three Guardians looking at her. She held up her hands and said, "I trust you all to do the right thing." They stayed, and quickly became integral to the success of their operation. What had begun as a simple survival became an organised effort to evacuate civilians from the last city. Foraging parties inevitably came back with more people than they left. Scouting parties probed the edges of the city and found avenues of escape, places where the Cabal had lax in their patrols. Eva found that the same skills she's used to plan the holidays in the tower were invaluable in organising this underground movement. She had cobbled together boards from old classrooms to create a schedule and wrote on the backs of old forms and newsletters to make delivery packages of civilians and the occasional lightless guardian. Day in, day out, this became her quiet routine. She faded into the background of the underground. Plan, move, sow, repeat. Even when contact was finally made with the farm and getting survivors to the EDC became the goal, Eva was always there making sure the trains ran on time. After some thought, she asked that her role not be spread around. She got word to people like Tess that she was alive, and that was enough for her. She had the chance to get out of the city dozens of times, but every time she thought she'd take that exit to go with the convoy, she stopped herself, settled back, did the work. And that's how the months of the Red War passed for Eva Levante. So that there is confirmation that the Red War was actually months. So those cutscenes going through the mountains trying to get to the farm and that initial campaign was months for us.
That would have been nice to have at the time, have like little cutscene or where it fades to black, go, 3 months, 6 months, just to explain the timeline in game for us of how long that we've kind of been out of action.
Yeah, because, I mean, for all I know, I passed out from exhaustion and took a day's rest or something. Not months have passed or whatever, right? Yeah, that was definitely unclear.
The good fight. Abuela, ma'am? It was quiet for a whisper, but enough to wake Eva. For a spinning, disorientating moment, she thought she was sitting in her living room back in the Peregrine district. Her favourite Afghan over the end of a couch and Carlos standing over her. But that wasn't Carlos. The concerned face of the hunter Ramos looked down at her, more than a few of the Guardians that went through the underground had taken to calling her grandmother. But Ramos had stuck with the group through all the long months of war. He was very protective, sometimes smothering, and she sighed as rubbing her eyes. I'm up. What time is it?" She sat on the old couch and been sleeping on, wincing as she tried to sort the knots she'd developed sleeping on her side. Almost 0700. His voice was low and a little sheepish. She looked at him. "You were supposed to wake me an hour ago." His grin was lopsided. "You needed the sleep." She stood carefully and tottered on unsteady legs, turning her face so she couldn't see her annoyance. "Are they waiting?" "They've only just arrived. One of the reasons I waited. They're not expecting you for another 10 minutes, trying to justify himself. Eva sighed again. "Thank you, Ramos. You're right. I did need the sleep. I was up again too late last night. Go tell them I'll be right down." "Yes, Mom." He sounded happier, and his footfalls as he left the room were light and confident. Eva stepped into the bathroom off the main living quarters of this second-floor flat. Her morning routine sorted, she poured some water out of one of the ration canisters into a stoppered-up sink so she could wash. Tried to feel a little less like she'd been slept on a half-rotten couch in an abandoned building. Water dripped down her nose as she reached blindly for one of the pieces of scrap cloth they used for towels to dry her face. When her eyes cleared, she found herself looking at a stranger. Eva had always been on the thin side. She could still remember her mother chiding her, telling her to eat and clean her plate. Now the woman staring back at her was positively gaunt. Bags under her eyes, hair chopped brutally short, and her clothes. The clothes she'd been wearing the day of the attack hadn't lasted 2 weeks. Never intended for living rough. The homespun outfit she'd stitched for herself would never have passed muster back at the tower, but out here they had to do. At least she'd been able to salvage her trademark shawl, something to remind her of better days. As she drifted into the living room, Eva reflected that better days, of course, were why the group was gathered downstairs. All of the underground cell leaders gathered in one place for an important, perhaps final conversation. For the underground, the Red War was a stunning victory. They'd won. The only civilians and guardians left in the city were those unwilling or unable to go. Eva frowned, saddened. Every few weeks they heard stories of a group of guardians overrun from a supposedly secure bunker by the Legion assault. The loss of civilian life had been staggering both in the initial assault and the intervening months. As she looked down into the street, through a slit around a boarded-up window, she had to admit the feeling of satisfaction. Now all was left for the underground itself was to pull out, make for the farm and the safety and numbers of Hawthorne's group. Eva raised her eyes to the empty streets of the distant tower and twisted and ruined. She would stay, she decided. Guardians like Ramos could check on her from time to time, but someone needed to stay behind and keep the lights on. There could be refugees still alive, out there, still hoping for a way out. She turned away from the window to head downstairs when an explosion ripped through the street in front of the apartment. Eva's world turned white. Now this one's called Last Day. This is all the same book that I'm reading, it's just quite a long one. Eva, for the second time in as many minutes, shook her head and tried to understand where she was. There'd been no warning. She heard a few seconds of a whining engine overhead, and then a massive explosion ripped through the street in front of the underground apartment. The blast had thrown her to the ground like a doll. Everything hurt, and from somewhere close by she could hear the guttural shouting of Cabal soldiers. The distinctive sound of Guardian weapons fire was answering. Someone was screaming. Without thinking, she was on her feet, lurching towards the far corner where her shotgun lay on a side table. 3 steps, 4, weapon in hand, checked, just in time as the apartment door flew open and a pair of scions stepped through, weapons ready. Eva Levante, seamstress of the tower, would have been taken aback. The gaunt woman she'd just seen in the mirror had spent months of dry firing the weapon, endless drills and trained for action. And her first shot took the one on the right in the chest and blew him out the room. It had not prepared her for the kickback, however, and she felt something crack in her arm as the weapon bucked against her. The flinch saved her life as she unwittingly pivoted to the side, narrowly avoiding shots from the other Cabal creature. Roaring, she raised the weapon, and her answering blast threw her against the far wall. Breathing heavily, she reloaded the weapon with one hand, waited and listening. No more outside that she could hear. Fighting was fierce downstairs. They needed her. She stepped to the door, weapon outstretched. The sound of a war dog bursting through the apartment window was like another explosion. Eva whirled around as the scaly beast scuttled to her side, and another pair threw themselves from the hovering troop transport into the small living space. They landed with surprising grace, and 3 sets of hungry eyes stared at the seamstress. Drool smeared the floor as 3 sets of fanged mouths worked eagerly. Eva fired. The beast charged. Caretaker. Eva Levante stood leaning against the ivy-covered outer wall of the barn, gazing down at the football field at the farm. The old nets were slack now, needed to be rehung. No one came by. Who cared enough to restring them, and the farm's current inhabitants were not the sporty type. Beyond the field were the rolling hills of the European dead zone, and on the horizon, twisted, ruined spur that was the Shard of the Traveller. Her first days back on her feet, recovering from the attack at the apartment, she'd stared in wonder at that view. Now she was watching the clouds idly roil and collected around the shard. Bored, Eva smiled and shifted her weight off the wall and onto the carved cane that kept her upright. To think, after everything that had happened, she could be bored. Her first days at the farm had been a whirlwind of medical treatments, rushed through by attendants already on their way out as she was coming in. It had been the final days of the Red War, a major operation planned to retake the city. One old woman coming in from the underground was a low priority, and in the commotion even the old friend she'd hoped to see had missed her. Now she was alone, or mostly alone. She turned her head to see Cryptarch Tyra Khan chattering away with the farm's postal frame. Primary operation returned to the city. Darby had become Tyra's unofficial research assistant. Together they continued to study and examine humanity's history through the lens of the dead zone. A sideline from the turmoil at the tower, Tyra was apparently only too happy to claim. The scout Devrin came by every once in a while for a chat as well, and when he was feeling cheeky he referred to their little group as the Old Hands Club, usually smirking over the top of a cup of tea. Both still had an official jobs to do, of course, and they took their roles very seriously. Her role at the tower had never been one vital to operations, of course, but no one had rushed to ask her back to the market either. Tesh and Banshee had reached out once in a while, and she'd given advice on how to set up their new space. But Eva was here at the farm for the lost. They travelled into the place in ones and twos. They all shared something in common. The shard hadn't connected with them. They came to sit and stare at it in the distance, to talk about how the Red War had been as unpowered guardians, some forced by circumstance to literally sit on the sidelines. When the lights had returned, some of them reported that it felt different. It sat under the skin like a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. A diminutive exo woman was one of the pilgrims, Eva remembered most clearly. She hadn't even known they made exos that sort. The woman shifted and twitched as she talked, unable to calm herself. At the mention of the light fitting differently, a statement she'd heard a lot of guardians make, Eva asked the same question she always did. So does that mean your light is different now, or are you? The exo stopped and narrowed her eyes, thinking. She was stock still for the first time since arriving at the farm. That was usually how it went. Sometimes asking the question was all it took to get them sorted out. Others took a lot longer. Sometimes spending the weeks at a time at the farm just doing as Eva was, staring up at the shard. Some came to the farm, found no answers, and on the left foot walking towards the great landmark on the horizon. So far as Eva knew, none of them had ever come back through the farm. It was a strange life, a strange time. Another role she'd never asked for, but she found she was good at it. And Eva Levante had no interest in returning to the city.
What's interesting is that question, isn't it? Was it the light that changed, or was it us as guardians that changed?
Our view of the light changed.
And I think that's what kind of fueled Beyond Light, really, isn't it? With the light and the dark of how we perceive both of them at the moment.
Because I believe before we lost our light and gained it back, we wouldn't have even looked at the darkness.
We'd have been like
and
Zavala.
we also took the light for granted. Yeah, we thought that, once we have it, we always have it. I mean, we didn't take, as far as I'm aware, the lessons from the Fallen who had it and then lost it, right? We're just like, oh, well, we have it now, and now it's eternally within us or whatever, right? But now that we've lost it, and now that we've seen that it can, not only that we've lost it, but it can be forcibly taken away from us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you've got to remember the
Traveler
Traveller has never lied. Through the speakers, and there's been multiple speakers, it's always been well known that the Traveller will be here for a time and then it will leave. It has always said this. There's been no qualms about this. He comes into the system, he'll terraform a load of it, and he is going to leave. I say it. Sorry.
So, do you think that the Traveller has come into our system, like you said, it's terraformed, and it was about to leave when we kind of... It stayed here hiding from the darkness, and then when Gaul kind of put its little barrier on it, and then it broke apart, and now it's reset itself. Maybe the time has reset itself so that it's still got a considerable amount of time to be with us? Or do you think it's getting ready to go away again? Maybe that's what Lightfall is. Maybe that's what's going to happen in year 3.
Who knows? But it
I
did
don't know,
repair
you can
itself,
never-
so you would think that it's getting ready to bounce, right? Now it's fixed itself, getting ready to go on vacation, you know.
Or
head out.
it can sense the darkness there, and it's going to finish off what it started, and then basically, to quote a clan member, it's going to do one.
Sorry, what?
It's gonna book it out of town.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was saying. Okay. I mean, that's why else would it repair itself? You know what I'm saying? This whole time it's just been hanging out, you know, half broken. Oh, crap, now the darkness is here. Well, you know what? I think you guys are good.
Yeah.
Deuces, you know?
And it's interesting that people have come in with Beyond Light. They don't even know what the farm is, because that's been taken out of the EDZ map anyway. It was like the pseudo tower. It was where we went to when we wanted to play football. There was a vendor.
Or do some dodgy Cryptarch stuff, because Tyra liked helping us out when it wasn't quite kosher.
Yeah, there was a Cryptarch, there was a vault. Was there a gunsmith?
There was, until the tower came back online. Shax
Yeah,
was there.
we had the Vanguard there for a little bit, didn't we? Until we progressed part of the mission.
Yeah, Banshee and Shax were there. They were in the barn, along with Amanda.
So this was before Eva actually got there, wasn't it? So they returned to the tower, or the second tower, because this isn't the actual tower we're in at the moment. They returned to the...
Basically, Eva got there as we were launching that final attack on Gaul.
Yeah. Okay.
We were trying to retake the city at that point. Now, that brings us back to invisible scars.
So just before you... Sorry. I was going to say, before you go on to that, have you guys noticed, if you're standing in the tower that we're in today and look across to the old tower, they've started doing...
It's been fixed.
Yeah, it's been fixed. They've started doing some construction work. And I did hear that somebody said that it's been data mined that we are potentially going back to the old tower, but it's been fixed up.
I had heard
so
that.
I thought that was quite interesting that we're now talking about the towers, you know, falling. And
We start fixing up the old tower. They can't be bothered to fix up that hole by Zavala.
no, because we're fixing the other one. You've seen how long it's taken. It's taken nearly 3 years to fix the other tower. You know, we had to get the contractors in.
They knocked up that Vex gate in about 3
I was
months.
going to say, if we'd have got the same guys that had constructed that Vex gate for Ikora back at the Season of Undying, we would have been fixed and done. But yeah, I know what you mean.
The ones that followed 0 OSHA standards? Yeah.
Invisible scars. The comms unit in her little room chirped loudly enough to wake Eva from a sound sleep. Eva had turned the little outbuilding into something of a homey space with the use of fabrics and art, scavenged from the dead zone. But as often she would wake suddenly these days, it took her a moment to remember where she was. She groaned, and as she slid out of bed using a nearby furniture to steady herself, the damage the war beast had done had been extensive, and even now she could feel the tightness in her legs where the Braytech had knit the bone and sinew back together. She slumped into the little chair in front of the comms unit. The light from the screen lit the room, which was otherwise almost completely dark. She blearily peered into the unit as the image of Tess Everest revolved itself. It was daylight in the city, and Tess was impeccably dressed for work. "Do you have any idea what time it is here?" Eva asked, allowing the annoyance to seep into her words. "Yes, I do." Something in Tess's voice made Eva sit up and look closer. There was a tightness to Tess's face, and she looked frightened. "Tess, what's going on? Are you all right?" Eva was wide awake now and plucked at the edge of her teal robe to draw it around her. She was suddenly cold. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Just wanted you to know right away. I bet Tyra's getting a call from Rahul right now." Tess looked down and away before looking at the camera again. "Sweetie, Cade's dead. Something happened out at the reef yesterday. I don't know all the details, but everyone's talking about it. Eva's mouth formed a thin, worried line. She'd never been overly fond of the Hunter Vanguard, but many people looked up to him, relied on him, and it was something. If something was powerful enough to kill Cade Six, the Legion. Tess shook her head, still quiet as far as word goes around here. She gave a dim smile for the first time since Eva had picked up. You know how reliable the rumour mill is, though. It could be anything. Eva sat back in a chair, frowning. I'm sorry, dear. I know you liked him. Tess shrugged, trying to play it off. Don't give me that. We weren't swapping stories in the market that long ago. Tess stopped and nodded sadly. There's going to be a memorial service, I think. Will you come back for it? It was Eva's turn to look away from the screen. It was the first time someone had asked her to go back. And a funeral of all things. Eva was about to make an excuse when Tess continued, her smoky voice taking on a light tinge of humour. While you were here, you can sort out that holiday programming for the Frames. Eva's eyes widened. The Frames are doing holidays without me? Tess's smile broke into a full grin. We were just as surprised. Somehow all of the holiday gear got packed up along with the critical supplies in the transfer to the new tower, and when your programs kicked in, they were able to find the tagged crates. Tess picked up her comms unit and angled the lens so it would show the dawning hat sitting on top of a mannequin in the corner of the room. Eva shook her head in disbelieving. They did the dawning without me? Tess's face came back into the frame. Over the summer, Cora got someone to help her set up an event to commemorate the end of the war too. Eva tried not to let her annoyance show on her face. How was it? Tess shook her head from side to side, evaluating. Oh, you know, okay. When she saw Eva's mouth tighten, Tess laughed. Didn't have your touch, sweetie, she sighed. Oh, it feels good to laugh. Come back to the tower, even if it's just to pay your respects. I haven't given you a hug in what feels like years. In the darkness of her room, Eva turned to look out of her windows. On the horizon, the dim glow of the shard was like an anchor, a symbol of the past. Eva looked back towards her friend and smiled. You can never go home again. Eva Levante pulled open the door to her storage unit and gagged at the smell. She turned to the two Frames who were accompanying her and pointed inside. Start by sanitizing the whole space. When it's clean, we'll start moving in the crates. The Frames both nodded to her and beeped affirmation. They were already sweeping with abandon as they crossed the threshold. Eva stumped back several paces, supported by a cane, to try and avoid getting dirt on her outfit. Around her, the marketplace swirled with activity. Civilians on break ate lunch at the counter. Shoppers browsed the stalls, Frames cleaned and patrolled and delivered goods. And Guardians were everywhere, a riot of colour and style as they flipped and floated and leapt around the space. Eva scowled, frustrated with herself again for letting Tess, and to an extent Amanda, talk her into returning. None of this felt right. None of it felt comfortable. And now this space had given her to store her wares had apparently last been open and cleaned sometime before the faction wars. She found a bench along one of the market's walkways and sank gratefully down, watching the crowd pass by. Fashion always did in the city. It had moved on quickly since the day of the Legion attacked. She was still catching up and still finding her footing. Rebreather masks and in particular dotted the faces of the crowd, more stylish and ornamental than practical. A holdover from necessity in the days of rebuilding and restoring the city. And the Guardians. Tess had spent much of their time together since returning, filling her in on fashion trends among the Lightbearers set. And Eva was incredibly impressed. Tess, the Foundries, even the Vanguard had outdone themselves. Armour designs and shader schemes had improved dramatically since her days in the old tower.
And this is when we got the new shader styles that look like rusty and whatnot.
Yep. What am I even going to do here? She muttered to herself. What, can I do that? She trailed off, watching a Guardian walk by with what appeared to be a full crest rising above his helmet and a warlock robe that flowed and rippled behind him in the breeze. That's it. Eva stood, heading to the door. Tell the frames to stop cleaning. Then someone stepped in the path. A guardian in a leather trench coat and a shiny black helm. Eva? The voice was distorted. She could see her own reflection in the helmet, confused. The gloved hands came up, and the headpiece came off, revealing the smiling face of Ramos. Abuela, it's me! He pulled her into an enormous hug as he smiled. You rascal, you never gave me the chance to say thank you. She swatted him kindly on the shoulder as she pulled away. Just saves a woman's life and then ride off to retake the city, why don't you? Ramos laughed happier than she'd ever seen him. The light hung around him easily, and he turned to a pair of guardians who were standing nearby, watching tentatively. Team, this is Eva Levante. You remember my stories. This woman is a legend. She gestured at the two. Eva, these two are shiny as glimmer. Just became guardians just before the Legion attacked. Eva nodded her head deeply to them. Good to meet you both. One raised a hand in an awkward greeting. The other cocked her head. What do you do here? Eva sighed. Oh, I'm not...
Thank you! Somebody asked!
Oh, I'm not...
Lol.
I'm not actually, Ramoth laughed and said, she's phenomenal seamstress, a hero of the war, and she is one of the pillars of life in the tower. Remember the dawning holiday you liked so much? She brought that to the tower. The two turned to her impressed. How did you get Zavala to agree to... Eva smiled. To have fun, she laughed, at the responses she got from all the three guardians, and tapped her cane twice on the ground. That's a good story if you have some time. Ramos laughed. Absolutely. Come, let's get some food and we can help these kindergardians learn a thing or two what it means to be part of the tower. With help from a friend, Eva Levante walked easily across the market square of the tower bastion of the last safe city, home. And that's that book about Eva Levante. And it says a lot about the Dawning. The Dawning is basically they've taken Christmas, Hanukkah, all the holidays around this time of year and made their own. And that's what the Dawning is. It's just a celebration of life.
Okay. I mean,
And
I thought
also,
we knew that.
well-
is there like a follow-up to that?
well, no, it's I don't know how much people know, and I'm just trying to explain. There's some people that have just come into the game yesterday, but there've been other old hands here being from day one.
Fair enough.
And it's just literally that. It's everything around this time of year, Christmas, Hanukkah. Is it Hanukkah? I can't remember. But
Yep,
it's just one big celebration of life. And she's the one that brought this to the tower. And it shows you she's just not this old crazy stranger lady that gives you machine guns for baking cookies.
She's not just a
Just
lady. Yes.
No, she can handle herself, and she helped so many people during the Red War. The lore like this, I actually quite like these short stories like this, where it gives you a better insight to a character that you generally wouldn't think, oh, she's back again, and.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, at least somebody like me that had no idea who she was or what she was there for, right? Because I'm just like, who is this woman? She only comes during the holidays, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know any lore about her. So, okay, granted, I know a little more, and granted, she has some clout, let's say, right?
Well, she can make Zavala smile.
Well, no, I mean, I've seen Zavala smile before. It doesn't take much. Just, a battle won or something. I don't know. I have no idea where I'm going with this. Point is you're right. It is nice to know something about a character that you thought was otherwise useless, pointless, So even if, her appearance in the game was just like, oh, she's back again, at least we know that, hey, at one point in time, she did some pretty cool stuff.
You had some questions last week. I can't remember who they were from, but they were asking if there were other lore podcasts out there.
Yeah, Guardians of Lore was one.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we didn't know if y'all were a podcast or just like a group or whatever, because you had mentioned them before, right?
The
And I was
Guardians
like,
of Law started off as a podcast.
Oh, there you go.
It is purely that. Then they created their own server. Now, have you ever heard of the Focused Fire Chat?
No. Yes.
Well, they've been around for a long time discussing the law. They've had the likes of Mylan Games on, Bife's been on the show, and they've been around for a long time. And just recently, they've just amalgamated both of their Discords together into one massive law center, and they've called it the Law Hub, which was a. But if you want,
I think you mentioned that before. That sounds familiar. Lore Hub. I don't know if you've said that before. If I came across it, like looking something up, I don't know.
possibly. Now, if you want to just have the law read to you, and you don't want anything else, the best one out there currently is the Destiny Law audio files. That's audio files with a PH, not an F. If you want the law read to you with a bit of discussion and some explanation in it, then you have the Guardians of Law. Now, if you already know a bit about law and just want a bit more discussion and a bit of in-depth discussion about it, then you move on to Focus Fire Chat. Because that actually already relies on you knowing a good deal about the law before actually going into understanding and explaining some of the actual. To be honest, some of it even goes over my. I've been looking at the law for quite some time now, and even some of the stuff they discuss on there goes right over my head. Blue is such an intelligent bloke.
But yeah, if you could like put that in a list or something, so we could post it on our webpage, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I can do that. Well, you can find them all on like us on Google Podcasts.
Well, not just the names, but like how you just explained in what order to do it based on your knowledge level. That's more what I'm worried about. Hey, if you know, if you're at this level, go here. If you're at this level, go here.
Well, it's not. It's
this level,
when I found Focus Fire Chat first, I just dived straight in the deep end, and I to be honest, I quite enjoyed it. I learned quite a bit from them, and it was through them I found everything else.
So there is one thing I wanted to bring up. Okay. Earlier, when Tess was having that conversation with that individual about, hey, you know, why should we bring them with us or whatever, right? She's like, you know how many times they've put their lives on the line for us? Well, playing devil's advocate here, if you knew you could do something without getting killed, right? Is it really a risk?
It's always a risk with Guardians. Look what happened to Cade. He went in there with a blasé attitude and they killed his ghost. And then they killed him.
Right.
So they're not completely immortal.
Their ghost is their weakness. Yes, I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, right? Freaking... I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, when you're freaking semi-immortal... I don't really see the whole risking your life thing. I mean, yeah, okay, so everything has a level of risk to it, right? A guardian can have their ghost killed and they could potentially lose their light. But it's about the same risk as flying in an airplane, you know? It's like, oh, you're risking your life flying in an airplane. Could you die? Absolutely. Are you likely to die? Not really. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like, I get where both sides are coming from in that particular argument, you know? Because they're like, well, you know how many times they risked their life for us. But did they, though? Did they really? You know? Because they are functionally immortal, right? Because if Guardians were that easy to kill, the warlords of lore would not have even been a concern, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can they be killed? Yeah. Is it easy to kill them? Hell no. So it's just like, I mean, you're right. Yeah, they can be killed, but you know, at what cost? At what length would you have to go through to kill them? Right? And if the ghost is smart, right? Let's say you freaking. All right. So the ghost itself, when it dematerializes or whatever, where does it go?
Hides under your armor.
But it's still physically there. Because I was thinking, like, if you're a guardian and you get killed, let's say you got wally-bopped in the field, you weren't paying attention, whatever.
Sorry.
Okay.
Wally-bopped.
Yeah. So
a new one on me.
You got wally-bopped, and now you're waiting to resurrect. But like, hey, they're waiting for that ghost to pop out and resurrect you so they can, cap it or whatever. What if the ghost just knows this and doesn't come out? It's like, you know what? I know that they're waiting for me to come out, so I'm going to hang out here for how long, right? So if the ghost never comes out and they've killed the guardian, right?
Yeah.
How long can the ghost essentially just wait to revive the guardian? Like if they grab the body and they freaking throw the body in a furnace and, bake it to bits, will the ghost still materialize and resurrect the ashes of the guardian into what it was? I mean, what's the extent of guardian resurrection?
They did that to Reslazir before he turned into Dredgen Yor.
Yeah.
Now, basically, what he did, he went into a massive firefight with a load of Fallen, got killed. They thought, yes, we've got him. We've killed him. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yep.
They started to disappear off, or started to let down their guard. His ghost rezzed him, and he just basically supered the whole lot in one go. Because
sounds about right.
So that proved they can actually choose how long not to res them for, and there has even been cases back in the Dark Ages of warlords not being actually resurrected by the ghost because of what they've been doing.
Okay, so what you're saying is, I know that the ghost doesn't have to immediately revive it that second, right? But how much damage can the guardian's body sustain and the ghost still resurrect? Like, can a guardian be effectively atomized? Can a guardian be caught in a nuclear blast, completely reduced to
yes, they can.
Basically dust, and then the ghost
yes,
pop
it's
out?
happened.
Okay, so therein lies my question. Where the hell is the ghost at? Where the guardian's body gets eviscerated, but the ghost still materializes out of God knows where, right? Because if they're under their armor, they're still physically there. So if the guardian gets vaporized, so does the ghost. Boom, done. Right?
Well, that's all I can presume. Then they go off to a similar place that the planets and the Leviathan have gone to.
Okay.
That's theory. That's not confirmed, by the way.
Okay. Yep. I hear you.
To be honest, all I've seen it say in lore, it materializes and dematerializes.
The ghost itself, you mean?
Yes.
Got you.
And we already know they can pick us up from virtually nothing.
Mm-hmm. That we do.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's one question answered.
Yes.
Asked and answered. Okay. Sure.
Before we go, I just wanted to say thanks for the comments from Planto999, and I got a private message through the Bungie Destiny 2 companion app saying 2 Titans and a Hunter, keep up the good work with the podcast, you lot. Thank you very much for the comments.
Yep, and you can't stop us, so of course we're going to keep it up. That sounded a lot better in my head, and it didn't come out quite as badass as I was hoping it would. So, we're going to leave it at that.
Yes.
So just a few things to go through before the end of the show. Next week in Destiny, we have earn double Nightfall the Ordeal rewards all week, plus earn double Platinum rewards in the Nightfall Ordeal all weekend. So that's going to be January the 2nd and January the 3rd that you can earn on top of the double Ordeal Nightfall rewards to begin with. And the Nightfall boss is going to be the Transcendent Mind in the Glassway Nightfall on Europa. And Shax is going to be bringing mayhem to the Crucible. So this is also known as Dawning Essence farming, because the matches are so quick. So that's going to be worth jumping into if you are farming the Dawning Essence. And on that note, Bungie have tweeted it out in the last week to say that they are enabling triple Dawning Spirit awards from all sources for the remainder of the Dawning event 2020. That's from Bungie Help. They are also investigating an issue where PS5 players can't view their clan rosters in-game, and they're going to be targeting a mid-January for a fix for this. At this time, it is recommended that PS5 players add to their friends list. Also, another issue that has come up is that the True Prophecy hand cannon was removed. It was in one of the patch notes previously on one of the TWABs in the past couple of weeks, and Cosmo has taken to Reddit just to clarify the reason why. True Prophecy was removed due to adding the 7th Seraph hand cannon and wanting to make sure the world pool has a balanced distribution. Those two, along with Die Promise, would mean players would be getting more kinetic hand cannons over other drops in the world pool, and our goal is to ensure players have a wide variety of archetypes in the world pool. Spoiler, we do have 2 new 120 hand cannons coming next season for anyone who's enjoying that sub-archetype. So if you have got a True Prophecy, at the moment it's a very, very good roll and it's worth hanging on to. With that, I'd like to point you in the direction of some tips, tricks and guides this week. Only a couple. Astrocross Gaming has finally come to the realisation that the True Prophecy hand cannon is one of the best hand cannons in the game, after us highlighting it weeks back when you were able to get it. He's got a video on how good it is, so it's worth having a look if you have got one in your vault. Taking everyone's advice on this, that it is a really good hand cannon. Another couple of videos point you again in the direction of Abbey Hour with her penguins that she does each week to show you the locations for that, and the drone nodes that you can shoot to get those triumphs done as well, so I will link those in the show notes. Plus, Pattycakes Gaming has done another in-depth interview with another YouTuber going into PvP, and again, like he did last week with his video, this is Castle is Live, and another Destiny YouTuber who's very, very good at PvP, and they break down the gameplays and things that you should stop doing in PvP. Again, 50-minute video, but it is well worth the watch and listen to if you are wanting to improve your skill at PvP. Again, if you're new to Destiny, if you're new to Beyond Light and getting into playing the game, this is a very, very good video for getting into PvP. Just to let you guys know that the Twitch Prime rewards have reset, so there's a new set of rewards for you for this next month, which include the exotic Hardlight, the Hardlight Brummel Dawn exotic weapon ornament, the Winter Lotus Shell exotic ghost, and the Home Away exotic ship. So that's another good bundle for you guys to pick up if you are subscribed to Prime Gaming and you've linked your Bungie.net account. So if you have Amazon Prime in your household, it's worth linking that up to your Bungie.net account and then getting some free loot, especially when it's exotics. Worth it. And finally, Cool Guy has a really, really good video on the Icefall Mantles and how to use them properly. So this is the Titan exotic gauntlets that you can get, that instead of giving you a barrier, they will give you an overshield when it's fully charged, basically. And it will give you an overshield for 20 seconds. I've been using this wrong. I've been using it with the Stasis subclass, and that is the wrong subclass to be using it with, because there are a lot of drawbacks to using that with this subclass. So he's got a really good video on what he recommends is the best subclass to use it with, and it does look like it works really well, and it's something I'm definitely going to try for the next Iron Banner. And that's it, guys. That's the end of the Christmas episode of our show, and I suppose it's now over to Peroty to take us out.
Well, friends, I hope your hearts are full, your glasses are empty. Thank you for joining us. Your Titans are Peroty and Nitedemon. Your hunter is no one responds in real life. Your lore scribe, bringing you all the holiday stories, is Not Arf. You can email the show at twotitansandahunter@hotmail.com. Find the show on Twitter at twotitans_hunter. We're on Instagram and Facebook, twotitansandahunter. If you need raid help, Guardian Hub or Guardian Downcast, really they can help you. If you go to lfg.frozen.party, we're here to offer lore reading, raid hindrance, trials hurt, and all the giggling and good feelings you can find. As always, find your favorite Guardian on Xbox Live, and Respawn on PC, and Nitedemon, coming in 2021, exclusively on Google Stadia. Watch the show on YouTube, listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and everywhere you can find audio across the internet. Nitedemon, Respawn, wish the people a Merry Christmas and a good night.
Merry Christmas.
and Happy holidays. We wish you a merry destiny. We wish you a merry destiny. We wish you a merry destiny. And all the homicides, killing the Vex, and Cabal are gonna be next. And I can't hold a tune, so this is the best that you get.
That was pretty good.
I'm impressed.
Oh dear.
I'm going to refer to you as our singing hunter. No one responds in real life.
No.